Hello and welcome to my Ed Talks. Just kidding. This is Edward Day. I'm going to be talking about my capstone project for this quarter, winter 2020. Yay! So I was working for Drexel University Archives, and to make a long story short, what they had me do in the first couple of weeks was kind of just get used to the archive format, like how they take in collections. We get them from donations or what have you. And they had me look at their schemas, which is actually, you can look it up. It's the DAX schemas, like how they organize their information, blah, blah, blah. And then they gave me a collection from the Center for Hunger-Free Communities. They gave me a bunch of records that they had from their summer meals and Witness to Hunger program. And so what this is a finding aid. Now, a finding aid, of course, all of you have heard of metadata, I'm sure. Which is data about data. Well, this is data about data about data. Yeah, it's as broad as you can possibly be, basically. So we know that metadata is like, here's a picture and it has a title and then, like a contributor or whatever. All the things from Dublin Core, all that kind of stuff. This is actually a finding aid is a very broad. So let's say you have a collection, right? This tells you about everything in that collection from as broad a point as possible. So, the date range, the extent, so like how big the collection is, and then it's there's the tags that it's associated with, how many files, what those files are, right? And then the author, me, you can cite it up here, blah blah blah, whatever. So this is mainly for researchers, students, whatever, to kind of just like before diving into 155 files, they can have a broader idea of exactly what's in here. So I created that simply for, just, well, to get a better feel for archive space and how Drexel Archives organizes its stuff. That was the first 4 weeks, set the foundation, kind of the tone for how Drexel Archives operates. However, as some of you may have known, the meat and potatoes of my project was a lot of computer programming with Python. But to do that, I first had to understand the API. So the API, without getting too detailed about what an API is, essentially what it is a communication tool. It acts as like a line of communication between the data on a space, and says, hey, go ahead and I need this. And then the database says, yeah, I've got it right here. And it displays it for you. So to better learn how that API was working, they wanted me to, see how it communicated firsthand. So this is a piece of software called Postman. What Postman does is, after you authenticate and log into a space via Postman, what you can do is you can communicate to the API and say, okay, I need very specifically, say, digital objects from repository 4, and I need exactly the 300th digital object. So you send that, and then look, you can find all the things, title, publish, all the stuff, who it was created by, date, all that stuff. But you see, as you may notice, it's like one at a time. Like, that's going to take way too long. Backing up real quick here. So these, how do you get that? Well, you use these things at the end of this URL. They're called endpoints. So you take these endpoints that you can get from this site that I will also post below, and you attach them. So here's the endpoint. Boom! You attach them at the end of this, what they call the base URL, which is all this right here, and it kind of, Postman zeroes in directly onto exactly this thing. Now, that's a good starting point for learning, like, what these things are called, or what the format looks like. For example, this title is just a string of numbers, which is really gross, but nonetheless, you can see the create time, so that when you plug it into your code, you know what kind of variables that you're using, and that way Python doesn't just yell at you and freak out. Now, what Postman is doing is directly communicating without any other barriers in between it with the Aspace API and getting exactly what I need. Now, once I learned that, I had to say to myself, okay, I need to get all of the digital objects like at the same time with my Python. Now, as it turns out, there are 29,900 or 29,000, basically 30,000 objects. Um, Going through each one individually, looking at it, like 30,000, that is just inhumanly, that is impossible. So that's where Python comes into play. Backing up just a little bit, once I learned how the API was and how it worked, I was able to run some really simple scripts. So for security purposes, I changed this to admin. But so this really simple script, after it logs in, it says, okay, give me an empty box, or an empty list, I should say. And then for everything in the repository, which I have called for, just like we did here, boom, get me all the published resources. And then it's going to put all those published resources, check to see if it's going to check to see if a resource is published. If it is, it's going to put it into our empty box or list here. And then it's going to print out, first of all, it's going to print out all the resources that you found. And then it's going to tell me how many resources it found, etc. If I try to run this, it'll yell at me because my username and password are incorrect. But anyways, really simple, really easy stuff. But so going back to the bigger problem, which was the digital objects. I had to figure out, first of all, that Python cannot, and I would not expect it to, handle 30,000 objects. So instead, we had to tackle it 250 objects at a time. So basically, and I'll provide the guide to all this in the description if you want to read it a bit further. I do not have enough time to keep this video manageable to explain all of it in one go. But basically what this 131 lines of code says is, hey, 250 objects at a time. See, there it is. I want you to go ahead and put that tiny little chunk into a master list. And then, as you can see from that master list, I want you to filter it by our date here. And then I want you to print everything. And as you can see, if you go into digital objects, there they are. All 30,000 of them. Obviously, I'm not going to be clicking through them. We would be here for literally hours. But you can see, and it correlates with what we have on Postman, right? Digital object ID, title, a bunch of numbers, true, false, blah, 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 created by. Oh, look at that. It's the same thing. So that's one way I was able to confirm that, things are working. If I wanted to, I could go all the way down to 300 and do it that way. But anywho, so that's the really long and short of it. It was a really hard project, to say the least. While I had done Python before, I had never done APIs. So I had to learn what an API was, how it interacted. I had to teach myself Postman. I had to use my Python skills, which were pretty medium at the start. Like, I had done some data analysis and some simple things like make an Amazon like shopping list or whatever, simple stuff. But like, this is some data mining, like some advanced data science stuff. So I jumped into the deep end. Luckily, I was able to swim. But yeah, that's the long and short of it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out or look at the guide. Otherwise, yeah, till next time. Bye.